Metro Nashville Public Schools is the 42nd largest public school district in the United States, servicing 86,000 students and housing 11,000 faculty and staff on a daily basis. With such a big system, it makes sense that things are going to get a little dicey at times. But that is no excuse for the state that we have found ourselves in. Metro Nashville has become public education's version of The Bachelor, except, surprise, no one's going home with a rose tonight. Or maybe it's more like Lost, Season 17, where John Locke releases the monster and literally everyone on the island dies. Or better yet, it might be like Riverdale, but somehow juicier and with more drama and division. I come from a quaint town in Elkhorn, Nebraska. We have one of the best public school districts in our state. And the biggest thing that our board argues about is where to place spring break and how long it should be. This is all a bit of a rude wake-up call for me. As you scroll through Twitter and you dive deeper past the sunshine and rainbows of Metro Nashville's personal page, you see that there are two distinct groups at work: those who support Director Joseph and those who do not support Director Joseph. You see a wide variety of anger management problems at work and a whole lot of muck that you have to claw your way through to figure out what is really going on at the center of Metro Nashville Public Schools. Despite all this bad blood and contention between the school board and Dr. Joseph, there are two main points where they can come together and find common ground. The first is pride. At least somewhere on everyone's Twitter page, you can find a post about the joys of their job, or the successes of their students, or the triumphs of their teachers. Deep down, each of these people still loves their school district and the system that supports it, no matter how broken it is. This good news is the reason that they get up and go to work every day. It's the reason they have hope in their schools and hope for our democracy. The second point, albeit a little bit stickier, is outright hatred for charters and vouchers and any support from the state government to fuel them. Woven throughout almost everyone's Twitter reel is at least one, if not, say, hundreds, of posts about the heinous crimes against humanity carried out by charters and their supporters on a daily basis. Let's dive right in. We're going to take the next 10 minutes deconstructing Metro Nashville's Twitter profile. We're going to start with the school's official page. We'll look at Dr. Sean Joseph, the Director of Schools Presidents, and then we'll take a look at several school board members and see what their stance is on hot topics, what type of content they post, and what alliances and sparring groups form between them. First up is Metro Nashville's official page. It's really all sunshine and rainbows. And if you have any interest in what's going on in the district, besides report cards, snow days, events, and general announcements, this is not the place to look. There are some amazing things going on in this district, and the Metro Nashville page highlights the best of them. Once you get past all the administrative stuff about report cards and snow days and school board meetings, there's some really cool stuff to see. The page is littered with outreach events, from outside nonprofits bringing school supplies to underfunded schools, to new initiatives for English language learners, to ACT prep for high school seniors and juniors who are going on to college. The page is littered with local stars, whether it's Predators hockey players or country musicians, as a part of the Attendance Matters campaign, trying to get kids excited about coming to school. The page also features student successes, whether they're athletes, whether they're musicians, whether they're artists. Metro Nashville is set on showcasing what their students can do. And finally, there's a huge element of cultural education, which is so easy to overlook, partnering with the Nashville Symphony Orchestra to provide young students with an instrument petting zoo, a Frist Art Museum Affinity Week, taking students to the Belcourt to see new movies they might not be exposed to. All in all, Metro is doing some great things for their students. Next, we move on to the Director of Schools page, Dr. Sean Joseph. Much like Metro Nashville's official page, this is not the place to go if you really want to know the nitty-gritty that's happening in the school district. Dr. Joseph focuses on how Metro Nashville propels their students into the future, how Metro Nashville is a producer of excellence. And he backs this up with plenty of claims to success found throughout the district. Whether students are involved in dance, music, cheerleading, athletics, everyone is represented on his Twitter reel. He talks about strong cultures of respect and growth found in specific schools across the district. He calls out faculty and staff, bus drivers, teachers, people who are so underappreciated in our world, and tries to make them feel loved and accepted. And one of his favorite things to post about is former students coming back to see him, whether it's at the administrative offices or at a school, and getting to see how they've grown and how Metro Nashville has truly prepared them for the future. I hope you're about to change of clothes, y'all, because it's about to get downright dirty. We're moving into Will Pinkston's page, and this is just a hot mess. Will Pinkston is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, at least he was, personalities on the school board. He talks in one of his tweets about painting a picture of what is really happening, except he doesn't always do this as a well-behaved citizen, but rather that child in the corner who's drawing on the freshly painted walls with a crayon, vying for attention and trying to get his voice heard. Pinkston is a strong supporter of Dr. Joseph, a huge hater of charters, vouchers, and any attempts by the state government to remove power from the local school boards, and he has participated in extensive statewide advocacy for public education across multiple administrations. The first thing that Pinkston's page shows to us is that he is willing to throw down with absolutely anyone. We're talking with a man whose Twitter bio says that he is willing to block anyone that he wants. One of his most important posts recently was a very blatant, very potent letter to the governor and state board of education in Tennessee, talking about a system of free schools and teacher pay and how they are being endangered by charters and vouchers and legislation that is currently being discussed and pushed through the state legislature. He even threatens court action, which will likely ensue whether he's a part of it or not. He has hundreds of public displays of squabbles with other board members, particularly Spearing and Frog. And these go on and on in his Twitter page. While some of them are over real issues, most of them are just elementary and immature. Now that we've established that Will Pinkston is willing to spar with literally anyone, it's time to tackle some issues. There are 4 major themes woven throughout his Twitter presence: underfunding, the insanity of the charter movement, access issues, and his extended article Race to the Bottom. We'll start with underfunding. Pinkston believes that we need to prioritize BEP improvements, which is the basic education program. We need to fix the way that money is going into our schools. We should be focusing on schools, teachers, students, learning, materials, as opposed to charters and politics. He is so ready to call out problems with TN Ready, standardized testing and teacher evaluations, and score prizes. Finally, he speaks of a coalition with labor unions who are also upset with city and state governments in Tennessee due to lack of funding. He's not just tackling issues related to public education, but issues related to the failings of our democracy. Next, and this is really the bread and butter of Pinkston's page and his life's work, is the insanity of the charter movement. In his letter to the state government that we talked about just a few minutes ago, Pinkston talks about a huge sucking sound that will be heard throughout Tennessee public schools when legislation is passed that allows charters to take free reign over the state. This sucking sound is millions of dollars being taken out of public education and used to fund public charter schools. He talks about horror stories of charter schools, their misguided finances and corruption, their poor management of students and academics, and ultimately their failures and closing. Will Pinkston tackles access issues throughout his page as well. Metro Nashville has 1 nurse for every 3,000 students. That is an impossible ratio and does not account for students who might not have access to quality medical care outside of the school day. He also tackles free college tuition programs which have popped up around Tennessee. There are so many problems with these programs. For one, they usually go to middle-class families, which, while struggling, can do a better job on their own to afford college than their lower-class neighbors. And secondly, these programs only cover tuition. They don't tackle room and board, they don't tackle food, they don't handle textbooks, or the social costs of going to college. Are these programs really improving access for people across the state? Sadly, we don't have time to tackle every single school board's Twitter presence. But we do have time for 2 more, and that's Jill Spearing and Amy Frog. As we go through their personal pages, I think you will see a strong coalition between these two women, founded in their distrust and hatred for Dr. Shawn Joseph, the director of schools. Jill Spearing has a clear liberal presence on her page, support for an LGBTQ Equality Act, plenty of posts about women's conferences, and lots of support for 2020 presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. She is pro-teacher reform, talking about teacher conditions, their wellness, the perks they get, their salaries, money for their classroom. Spearing truly cares about what's going on in Metro Nashville and wants to see its students and teachers succeed for longevity. But all of this pales in comparison with the defamation and slander of Will Pinkston, Dr. Shawn Joseph, and Dr. Sharon Gentry, who's the chair of the school board. She holds Dr. Joseph, not the city, personally accountable for the lack of funding for Metro Nashville public schools, despite the fact that underfunding is a historic problem seen across multiple districts and multiple public sectors. To make matters even worse, she went on a 32-tweet-long crusade against Pinkston and Joseph, spewing lies and half-truths about the results of the audit that just came out, about sexual assault, about funding, about where their interests really lie, all backed up by a biased local news source. Next, we move on to Amy Frogg's page. As we've said, she has much common ground with the rest of the school board and Metro Nashville's interest. She cares deeply about proper funding for the school, especially in comparison with other states and similar districts. She thinks that vouchers are illogical and we should do everything we can to prevent government intrusion and protect religious liberty. Like Spearing, she is pro-teacher condition reform, tackling things like salary, perks, and wellness. Like Spearing as well, Frog has a very anti-Joseph platform woven throughout her entire online presence. She believes that pay disparities in the district exist solely because of Joseph, that there are lots of high-level executives in fake positions, and administrators who are being paid relative to who they know, not what they know or what they bring to the table. And on top of all that, she believes that we are paying Dr. Joseph way too much for the quality of work that he does. On Joseph's leadership, or lack thereof, she cites the amount of times that he has broken the law and violated school board policy, lying to the board, mishandling sexual harassment cases, and cites a scathing HR report talking about the lowest morale ever in district history. Like Pinkston, Frog is not afraid to throw down and tell you what she thinks, but that often leads her to some very unbecoming behavior. She was caught on a hot open mic in the break during a school board meeting, disrespecting Joseph, talking to him in ways that no one deserves, especially someone who is your boss and in a public setting. Despite Jill Spearing's biased 32 News article, defamation, repost crusade, and Amy Frog spilling of half-truths, disrespect openly to Dr. Joseph in public, and simply unbecoming, unprofessional, childlike behavior, the worst thing to come from Spearing and Frog's coalition was a forwarded message by Spearing, which called everyone who did not support Dr. Joseph to join her at a rally, wearing masks if they were worried about their identity being exposed. Dr. Joseph is the first African American director of schools in Metro Nashville's history, and the amount of racial prejudice, stereotyping, and harassment that he has gone through is inexcusable. Rhetoric matters, and to call your supporters to come out to an event against a black man wearing masks is unacceptable, and the cultural and historic implications are so clear to see. Nashville and the greater United States is going to hurt from this school board and this community's treatment of Dr. Joseph for years to come. Despite all the steps forward that we have made in accepting people who are different than us, this was a huge step back, not just for the school board, not just for Metro Nashville, but for humanity as a whole. So where does this leave us? We live in a broken society, a racist society, a homophobic and heteronormative society, a sexist and misogynistic society, a xenophobic society, a classist society. And all these attributes are institutional and pervasive. They permeate every sphere of life and leave no one untouched. We are what we eat. And as a society, we've been eating some pretty bad stuff for a while. We live in a society where victims are blamed, where survivors are trampled over, and where the poor and defenseless are left to starve and wither on their own. Like our president and so many others in today's world, we blame others for our problems. We find safety in scapegoats and segregation. People like violence because it feels good. Humans find violence and hatred satisfying. But what if there was something more satisfying that we could rally behind as a society? So many aspects of life are social constructs, and our schools and our teachers are heavily influenced by the society they find themselves in. In the words of Meryl Streep, disrespect invites disrespect. Violence incites violence. When the powerful use their position to bully others, we all lose. School is about so much more than math and history. School is about learning how to be a good person and a good citizen. And society, in its current state, doesn't make that job easier for teachers. Society, in its current state, doesn't make school a place where real learning can occur. What if underfunding and morale issues and whatever else Metro Nashville is facing was not the city's problem, or the state's problem, or the board's problem, and certainly not Dr. Joseph's problem? What if these issues were simply a manifestation of the broken society we live in, of the structural violence which plagues so many of those around us? If the school board and greater community spent more time working together and less time pointing fingers, real change could occur. Society, school, and the teacher could function as they were meant to. They could support one another. They could inform one another in positive ways that brings up and yields a new generation of students ready to accept others, ready to love others, and ready to give back to the system that made them who they are. Will Pinkston's solution to the mess was to drop out. And while I cannot say that I approve of his decision, it was clearly his to make. But something I've learned over the years through my spars with the church and my sexuality and acceptance is that I have so much more power to change a broken, discriminatory system from the inside with love and patience and consistency than I ever would from holding a sign or being angry on the outside. We are what we repeatedly do. Consistency yields constants, and constants create culture. What if we as a society rose up and repeatedly chose to love others? What if we as a society consistently chose to value education and the betterment of society? Think about these constants and the culture they would create that could impact our schools, our teachers, and our students for generations to come.